let's get into it, man.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and talk. So I sent you guys, now that Black is back, I sent you guys our group chat is now back in business. I sent you guys a video clip of a video from the Jude 3 project. They're kind of like a faith-based type of channel where they have like real conversations with people about different topics and what have you. And this particular video was about why I left. In other words, why I left the church. Did you get a chance to watch it, Black?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Really? That's why you didn't respond to it.
Okay. So I was wondering if it was going to hit a core. I felt like you would have really, like both of y'all would have related to it really well. I thought it was fascinating.
I watched it twice.
These different responses. And basically, you had a lady who was facilitating a discussion, and they kind of went around. Apparently, this was a much longer conversation, obviously. But the clip they showed just dealt with the reasons the people had left church. And so they went around and they talked first about what they enjoyed. I mean, most of these people grew up in church. So they went around talking about the things that they enjoyed the most about church and in their experiences growing up in the church. And then they talked about what caused them to leave. And the answers were different, but very provoking. Thought-provoking. And so that was something that I wanted to kind of do here is let's kind of just chop it up about church. And of course we can just kind of talk about where we are right now.
Sure.
But I can start with you.
Okay.
Are you currently?
No.
Okay.
I've got a lot here though, Walker.
I understand.
Okay.
That's what we're here for. Black?
No.
Okay. 2 no's. I'm a yes. I haven't since we recently started back in-person worship.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the billboard.
My wife hasn't been comfortable. She's starting to warm up to wanting to go. A bigger reason why I haven't pushed is because of War Report.
Oh, okay.
And now that we've gotten a lot of exposure, a lot of eyes are on us, I take preparation really seriously.
Sure.
So even before it's no longer just for homeboys jumping on, just saying whatever comes to our minds now. We actually, research and make sure we got our talking points. And actually during the season, we actually get access to the film from the prior game, and we usually will have watched the game at least twice before we give like grades and stuff like that. So we can make sure we're seeing. So the preparation that goes into our shows, you can tell because we speak very, you know what I mean? So a lot of that takes place on a Sunday morning for me. So I don't want to have to go to church and then come back and cram and do all of that and not be prepared or whatnot. So I haven't been comfortable with going back, but I am still very involved.
Okay.
So I want to talk to you, Gat, about starting with you. Like what was some of the things that you enjoyed most growing up when it comes to church?
Oh, dude.
Like what was the things that really it sticks with you to this day?
Dude, friendships, man. Like I think of my main unit of friends right now. Most of those are friends that I made in church, growing up in church and being involved as I was younger. So, yeah, socially, church was amazing.
Was church an option for you?
Nope.
It clearly wasn't.
But you know what's crazy, Walker?
What's that?
When I did get my driver's license, Sunday was still mandatory, right? Whether I'm driving or not, but no other night of the week or day of the week was mandatory. But I found myself driving myself to church because I was getting involved in other things, and was really enjoyed this group of guys that I got to see every day. So I was physically driving to the church house, if you will, on my own at 16 years old.
So the relationships,
yeah,
and the fellowship,
yeah,
it was a big draw for you.
Absolutely,
it was one of the things that sticks out now.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else
that I enjoyed about it?
Yeah, you can be honest. If that was it. Then
nope, that was it.
Okay. Black still thinking. Black, what?
Does that sum it up, Black?
About 75% of it, yeah.
Okay, come on, Collegeville.
So that was nothing that was nothing that you look back on and was like, you know what, I do appreciate. No,
I mean,
good,
like-
no good meals, no.
Well, like Gatrey said, it was like I grew up with like some of the same church friends. And also, I guess, one thing that I did enjoy and I still like would enjoy to this day is just the choir.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've gone to churches, and the thing that turned me off first is like,
Yeah, we get into that. We get into that.
Okay.
We get into that. Wait,
But
hold,
what I
hold,
did-
hold your peace.
what I did like is like when I was growing up, I was in the choir, and like what I liked most is like every year, you have like an anniversary, and where you learn new songs and stuff like that, and you perform those songs. So I did like that aspect of it. But the thing about it is with me going to church, I had no choice.
Right.
I was at church for Sunday school, then had to be there for 11 o'clock devotion to the end. And our church.
How long of a day was that?
Sunday school started at 9:15 at the church I went to. And then who knows when it would end.
3.
It depends on who got the spirit and how long it took the spirit to go away,
Oh, not go away, but
run its course.
yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Spirit never goes away.
Okay.
Why are you not at me like that?
Because you know this, Walker.
So,
This is
like-
in your DNA.
Like as I got older, my mom allowed me to like, I could leave early. Like there come a point where like when the preacher finished preaching, it's probably like church announcements and another song.
Mm-hmm.
After he's finished preaching, I was free to go at that point. And I'll just walk home.
Jeez.
Wow. I think for me, relationships for sure, like the fellowship part of it. And I think also too, I think like as I got older, I did appreciate like the teaching aspect of it. Some of those things really did stick with me and helped me through college and, in even to my life now. So I've had really, I've been in every type of environment. I've dipped my toe in a little bit of the Baptist environment because sometimes I would go visit my grandmothers, visited them for the weekend or her for the weekend, and then you have to go to church. So I experienced that small church setting. I've been in a predominantly white setting. And now I've been in, the church that I'm in now. So yeah, like I've experienced multiple environments in the church. And so I've had different experiences. Course good, some bad, but overall my church experience has been pretty much good for the most part. So let's talk about the things that caused you to leave.
Tradition. I just got tired of traditional things that to me didn't really align biblically from the same book that y'all are preaching about on a weekly basis. And I will say this, I don't know if this was her intent, but I know in my high school years, we had a youth minister there. She's probably one of the most influential people in my life, even to this day, even though I haven't talked to her in a long time. But the thing I liked about her is I always had like a quiet curiosity about things I would hear at church. But growing up in a highly traditional church, you don't ask questions. You sit, you listen, and you leave. Well, this youth minister allowed us to ask questions. So I was getting a lot of stuff off my chest. She made it okay for you to have that dialogue. So if I could go back and add, that would be a great thing about church in addition to the friendly fellowship or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that only lasted a period of time because they ran her out of there. But no one else laughed at that. But no, I guess mine was the tradition.
When you say tradition, rules?
Yeah, you don't sit on this pew because this is Sister Johnson's pew.
Right.
And she sits in this spot, and if you sit here, the devil gonna get you. Just stuff like that.
Literally this?
No, I mean I'm embellishing some for podcast medium purposes, but it's provocative.
Well, people are listening, so they need to know exactly what happens.
There was some pew stuff, but it wasn't like you're going to hell for it. But it's just you don't do that.
Sure.
You know, and then the church I grew up in was steered and heavily influenced by a group of elders, as most Baptist churches are, and I got to a point to where I'm in this environment in youth church, right? And we're being encouraged to be honest, to speak, to ask questions, to seek clarity, and to receive clarity as well. But everything I'm learning and cultivating here is not shifting to big people church, as we called it, right?
Right.
Like I'm getting there, and it's a totally different vibe. And I never understood that. And at a point, it made me question, well, goodness, am I being taught the right things? But I felt free to ask, and which I know now in my adult years, it's okay to ask about that stuff, because the thing, like we talked about, the thing that manifests if you don't could be toxic, right? Right?
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, yeah, going back to the elders thing. The influential group of the church, they were driving all the decisions and things like that. Well, we were younger, and it just seems like there was a huge disconnect in like what young people needed and desired versus what the elderly people who were driving the church thought that the youth needed. They were still operating in a dated
Sure.
format. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so when it came to current age resources in the church that we think at the time youth could have benefited from, those concerns were not heard. So that made me feel away. But then, you know, just growing, I don't know if I should get to this part yet. I'm going to stop here. Am I good? Because I'm really about to like,
we're not, I mean, the conversation.
You're walking me up to the high dive walker. Okay. And you're walking me up one step at a time, right? And my heart wants to just dive off this thing. But you've been on the high dive before, so I'll follow your lead one step at a time.
I didn't say anything. I mean,
I know, but you're going question for question, and I know this is calculated, and I want to play by the rules.
Blaque, what drove you? Blaque, what drove you?
Well,
out of the church.
I can think of two things. The first one is that with church in my household, so like my dad didn't go to church. My mom went to church every Sunday. And every Sunday she was at church, we were at church.
So I hate to stop you here, but how did that work with your dad not going, but your mom making y'all go?
We didn't question it.
Okay. Interesting.
We just knew that Dad wasn't going to be at church. But we had to be at church from Sunday school through 11 o'clock worship. And one of the things is like, there was never an off day.
Right.
If it was Sunday, we were at church. And a lot of times, there weren't a lot of kids our age like at Sunday school. And then they would show up around 11 o'clock, but still, that wasn't consistent. The only thing that was consistent was that me and my sister were there. And then I guess the second point kind of related to that is that over time, our church got older and there weren't a lot of people our age coming in.
Right.
So it'd just be like a lot of old people and a few young people, and we just had to sit there through it.
Right.
There was not no youth section.
Right.
Because it was a smaller church.
Okay. For me, again, I've remained in church, but I have seen two things that bother me about church. And what I've learned is I think my experience has been an outlier. I used to not think that. But one of the things that I would talk to you, Gatrey, about is it's difficult to build an argument around your experience and ignore the experiences that most people have had, right?
Which seems to be the backbone of this Jude 3 thing that you sent us. Yeah.
Right.
So I approve that message.
And so for me, I've had to come to grips that maybe as good as my experience has been, even though it's not perfect, it's kind of an outlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have to take my experience and put it to the side and actually look at what's actually happening across the landscape of the quote unquote church. And so for me, the biggest thing the two things, because we can go down a rabbit hole of issues, but the two biggest things that stick out to me, number one, is that for the most part, across the board, we don't give grace to people. We don't give people grace to make mistakes. And because if the name of the game is to grow up spiritually, then that implies that no one has arrived, which means mistakes will be made, flaws will be exposed, shortcomings will be revealed, and there has to be grace. And I think from prior generations, it's always been interpreted that if we give grace, it's perceived as condoning certain behaviors or sins that you don't agree with. And that's not true. You know what I mean? You can show grace. I mean, it's all about separating the sin from the person, right? You don't condone the behavior, but you see the value in that person. And so you're going to handle them with care, even though you don't approve of what's their lifestyle or whatever choices they're making, right?
All right.
I think the church, one of the reasons that the church has not collectively learned that lesson. So what happens is we embarrass people, we attack people from the pulpit, we judge people, we bring them up front, we call them, you know what I mean? We do all this type of wild stuff that you can't even find a scripture for. And then we wonder why they don't come back to church. And what happens is that when church leaders get exposed or they get caught up in something, they don't get grace because we haven't been giving it out to other people. So we get it back worse when it's our turn to be exposed, when we make a mistake, because we were never perfect to begin with. And so I think that's a big problem that I'm seeing, is because people are waiting on the church to fall and get exposed and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things that people have towards church is resentment for how they've been treated. I think another problem, and it kind of to piggyback off of what you were talking about, Gat, is I think that the church at large has failed to not only understand, but embrace culture. And what I mean by that is understanding when there's a shift in culture. And I think the failure to understand that is why you've had generations clash with newer generations, the youth. I think we still haven't figured out how to bring different cultures together, right? And I think because of that, younger people don't feel like they belong. Oftentimes, if you don't accept and embrace culture, you're viewed as being out of touch, and you kind of are, which means you're not an authority when it comes to speaking to things of said culture because you don't embrace it, right?
Right.
And so the legalism and the rules of church is what runs the risk of not embracing culture and understanding that things change. It's okay to go to church wearing jeans. That's okay. It really is. You know what I mean? And I get it because that's something me and my pops was at odds about, like, at times. And I'm like, yo, Pop, you are out of touch, yo. Like, for real. You're not going to get people to go put on some quote unquote church clothes or what you like. Some people look at some nice clean tennis shoes as decent. That's decent.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So I think the church's failure to do that is why I think a lot of people because they don't feel accepted. They don't feel as though they belong. They don't feel as though they matter. They don't feel as though they're seen. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think those are two big issues there. Let me ask you this.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I got some thoughts with that.
Sure.
I still haven't made it to the top of the high dive yet.
You're welcome to.
I think what you're talking about in terms of grace is two-sided.
Okay.
And you've touched on it, but I'm just going to share where I am.
Okay.
This is so crazy to say, but there was a point to where, I felt like I was going through the motions. I was going to church weekly, sometimes twice a week.
As a young adult?
No, this is let's say since I've been married.
Okay.
Going through the motions. It's the right thing to do. This is how I was raised. We go. But it was simply that. It was me going through the motions, right? Mm-hmm. And it was so, gosh, I don't want to say bad, but I was so like in that mode that I found myself really getting fed from other resources.
Like
Church of the Highlands was a big one.
Okay.
And it was crazy because around this time, Church of the Highlands was putting a lot of their content online. Mm-hmm. So my routine was, Sunday, let's get up, let's go to church. Let's do what we do at church, and let's do what we normally do after church, and then great. And then usually Monday at lunch, I would log on and I would hear the sermon at Church of the Highlands the prior day, and I felt guilty about that. But like in terms of the way they were presenting the word, I was getting a lot from that. Mm-hmm. So that has changed, and I just got to a point to where I was like, I can't keep going through the motions. Like this is not productive.
Yeah.
So I started jumping around. At different churches in the city.
I remember we had this conversation about
just getting different things from different churches, and it was okay. And of course, my wife continued to go to the other church, and it's just something we did. And to quote her is like, well, at least you're going to church, So, but I was getting different things from different churches, but I wasn't. And this goes back to tradition. I didn't have an active membership at any of those said churches. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you subscribe to that active membership thing, it was still at the church I grew up in. But during that period of time, as I was jumping around, I remember having this spiritual reckoning. And in this reckoning, I had to come to grips with the fact that I know I needed to be in church, and I still believe that to this day. I still believe that. But the other part of it was I understand. I began to really understand that church is really run by people who have issues just like me, which goes back to your point.
Sure.
And so that's when I felt like I was starting to really uncover this grace thing that you were talking about before. And I'm like, well, man, and I did a gut check. Was I placing unrealistic expectations on humans just like me? And I was. And that doesn't just go for the church I grew up in.
Sure.
That even goes for the churches I was bouncing around from.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I was putting them on this, more than human type tier, and I had to realize that's not what you do. Like that's not fair to them.
Right.
So
right.
That's something that, oddly enough, since I've been totally removed from church, really since COVID hit, because I haven't really returned back since COVID to any church.
Have you been doing anything online?
Yeah. Still been doing stuff online, even leaving it.
You still engaged?
Yeah. Our routine now is my wife physically goes to church.
Sure.
But since there's nowhere for our boys to go, and church attendance is still limited, I have the boys with me. We'll do a devotional.
Okay.
We'll still get that in because I still believe there's value in that.
Sure.
Right. So, but no, during this period of time, it's just been so clear to me that A, I need church, and B, I gotta change my approach to church. I gotta realize that these folks are just like me. And I think that's so crazy to admit, because while I was going through the motions, or while I was in the midst of it, I could not see that.
Right.
So
You said you felt bad when you were like,
Oh my
going around.
goodness!
Why
Because
did
you know how it goes in the Baptist church, Walker, in the Southern Black Baptist Church. You don't cheat on your church, Walker. You don't cheat on them. You don't go and get the word from anywhere else. You come to this church house, you get your word, and you go home. You don't go anywhere else. I'm saying it with with jest and comedic value, but you know how that goes, Walker. Yeah. It's tradition thing. It's what word am I looking for, Walker?
I mean, you said it. I mean, it's kind of, they kind of guilt you. They kind of guilt you. They kind of they put the guilt on you.
Oh my goodness! I remember coming back to the church to attend some event that was that a friend of mine was associated with, and this was during the period of time I was kind of jumping around. Mm-hmm. And man, dude, like I wasn't even thinking about these folks. But man, when I re-entered, dude, I got hit with everything. I was like, well, thanks for the love, like, man. But anyway, yeah. So that was my thing. Like, I felt like since I had heard that a lot growing up, it was like I remember being at my desk looking over my shoulder and having the site brought up on another screen and just being terrified. Like, what if somebody from my church sees me getting this message from this other church
at work?
At work. That's how mental.
You work with church members?
No. Well, one. But it's just I just didn't want to deal with that. And I was like, man, I shouldn't be this frightened by this. But Walker, the thing, I guess the effect of it, what happened after that, how I was like more motivated to spend more time in the Word, more motivated to share the gospel. Like, it was a great time for me. Mm-hmm. And at least what I was ingesting at my home church, I wasn't feeling that led. And I'm not blaming anybody for that. It could have been my own shortcomings.
Well, I would ask you and Black, can a church be the end all be all? Like, can it be all things to the people who attend?
No.
I think some people make it that way.
Go on.
I mean, it seems like most people, like not most, but the most diehard church people, it's like church is everything to them. Like with Gatrey, you know that you need therapy. You go to a therapist.
Preach.
But the church is some people's therapy. Like, that's how they cope with things. Mm-hmm. Like going to church, getting that spiritual renewal they get each week instead of like going to like a therapist. But like, if they have issues, I feel like some people use the church to not really deal with issues in a healthy way.
You're right.
That's one of the guys on the video was talking about. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You sure you didn't watch it?
You missed a great video, by the way.
Oh, well, I saw church and it was like, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, not really.
But it's like some people like church is their everything, and I'm like, and I was gonna ask Walker this, like, what do you feel? And this may be coming up later, but what do you feel is like a healthy portion of church in your life? Like, how much church you think is healthy for you, and how much would be too much? And like, I guess, what should church fulfill for you in your life?
Good question. Because I was going to pose a similar question to you guys in terms of what you think the purpose of church is. Because I'm not sure, I think that's just a different answer you would get from different people that you ask. I think you have to establish your proper priorities in life, right? To me, I feel like a person's relationship with God is very important because on that is the foundation for everything else. Faith, family, career, those types of things. Those things follow suit. But I put the relationship with God so important is because from that comes your value system, right? That your value system determines the decisions you make in life. Your decisions determines your outcome in life, right? So I feel that church aids in your spiritual growth and development. Church shouldn't be everything to you, right? But I think that church aids in your spiritual development. And I think some of the more churches that have become very practical, churches that understand that we can give you spiritual guidance, but you need practical things to help you walk out the things that the Bible is talking about. There are some churches who have access to therapists and resources like that. There are some churches who bring in people who can talk about entrepreneurship. You know, if you're talking about living a prosperous life, okay, well, practically you need to figure out ways to build multiple streams of income, right? So some churches have put together resources to help people do life, and you ain't cracking open the Bible, right? And so, you know, our church, we have a family activity center where you can go work out and
Impressive
take care of it. You know what I'm saying? You, like different stuff like that. And so when you ask me what part of it, I think that you rely on church in a similar way. You go to church for fellowship, number one, but also church provides a way for you to serve and to serve other people. Because I think we all have something, like someone's always watching us, you know what I mean? And we always have something that we can impart. I know you talk about oftentimes how, you know, you got a friend of yours, his kids, you spend time with them, right? There's always somebody that we can impart our wisdom into, or just our example. And I think church allows us the opportunity to use our influence to affect people in a positive way. Church is not always about us getting something. And I think that's another part of the spiritual growth development part, is that I get to, what someone has done for me, I get to do that for someone else. So I do think church is important in that, because it's something fulfilling that comes from making a difference in somebody's life. Like it hits a whole lot differently. And then I think too, when you go to church, you go there to get a recharge, but you also get guidance on how to transform the rest of your week, right? You should at least leave church with at least one thing that you can put into practice that make the quality of your life better, right? And so that's why I look at churches. Church is an aid in your spiritual development. You spend more time away from church than you do in church. So it has to act as a guide for that. And so I think when you talk about church, I don't think church comes before family. I don't think church comes before you. You know what I mean? Unless you have a calling that requires more of you to serve. You know what I mean? But I think that church aids you in these areas. It aids you in your walk with God, which is number one. And I think from that, if you really are balanced, comes everything else: family, wife, children, job. Everything begins to fall in place as you slowly begin to apply these principles that you're learning on a week by week basis. The question is, are you doing that? Are you trying to do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that would be my answer to that question. I think that church is important because it helps you to maintain the first priority. But I think that where church religion and tradition has gone wrong is that they have put they've put church ahead of certain things that they shouldn't have. And I think that's where they've gotten in trouble.
So like church should just be a piece of the pie, not the whole pie.
It's not the whole pie, because you should be doing something throughout the week on your own. You can't live off of church. That's why when people leave church, they leave God altogether, because they have reduced their walk with God to just going to church. Right? It's way more to it than that.
But do you agree that we are the church though? Like the church is bigger than just a facility?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what you were talking about in terms of getting a chance to impart your wisdom on other people. that kind of stuff, those kind of opportunities exist outside of the physical church.
I agree.
Right.
Agree. I just think that for those who don't know what that looks like,
Oh, yeah.
church will start as a great starting point for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to me, I feel like that's a great opportunity to put your hands to service and work that benefits God's kingdom.
Sure.
Right? And from there, if you're paying attention, God will open your eyes to opportunities elsewhere.
That's a fact.
Because many of us are called not to just be in the church, but go outside of the church and expand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that we never get that far because of what you mentioned, tradition, and we don't even think about what can I do to help? What can I do to improve this? And again, you mentioned it. Sometimes you're just driven out because of this friction between new and old generations that want things to stay the same.
All right.
So I just think anything that stays the same dies.
Oof.
That's just true. Like if you're going to grow, you got to change, right? So if you don't change, you die. And that's what's happening to a lot of our churches. They are dying because they refuse to change.
No evolution.
None. You would be concerned if your boys stayed the same. You and your wife would be alarmed if they never grew.
Right.
Same with church. It has to evolve. Your leadership has to change. Sometimes you have to step down as a leader, not because you're in trouble, not because something's wrong. You need fresh ideas. You need new blood. You need people who can identify with the new world that's ever changing around us. Does that happen at church? No. Them people hang on to those positions till they die.
Like Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. Am I right?
You're not wrong. You're just being so honest about it.
I mean, let's have talk. Let's talk about it. Now you want to take a dive.
I want to be a Southern Baptist right now. God is good. No, you're right.
But my thing is that you have to ask yourself, when the people die off, what's going to happen to church?
Lord have mercy. Yeah.
And I think that's why we haven't handled the whole youth thing.
You know what's crazy?
Yeah.
Going back to the church I grew up in, as I was preparing to just kind of find other options, I remember having the conversation with the gentleman who was higher up in the church at the time in terms of like leadership structure. And he understood my concerns and my frustrations. Mm-hmm. And he said the very thing you said. He said, man, some of these folks are just going to have to die out before anything really changes.
That shouldn't be.
And, dude, that was a gut punch to me.
That shouldn't be.
But I mean, he was right. I didn't disagree with him. But it's just like, well, yeah. That led to more questions. Like, well, why is that?
Right. You said something about the lady who made an impact on you, allowed you to like ask questions.
Yeah, I'll drop her name, Reverend Wells. She'll never hear this.
So you think? Mm-hmm. Black, why do you think you couldn't ask questions? Was that like? Did you experience that?
When you say ask questions,
when you question things that you were perhaps taught, or question things like, okay, if this is true, then why is this happening?
Oh, I didn't question anything
because you was told not to. Did you have?
I wasn't necessarily told not to. I just knew not to.
Okay.
No, ask him the question you were just about to.
What?
Because he can't lie about that.
Did you have questions?
I mean, I have questions to this day.
But they
answer the question, Black.
But they never. But I'm saying, did these questions, or the failure to have these questions addressed, are these things that's like made you? It kind of killed whatever interest you would have had in church.
I don't think so.
Or did you not care enough to even like
more of that?
Okay, that's why I was I felt like you was like, were you kind of biding your time?
Yeah, like when I get old enough,
I'm getting out of here.
and ain't been back since.
Yeah.
Like I knew the rules in the house. Like as long as I lived under this roof,
I was gonna do this, but
once I moved
my
out,
first opportunity to get out.
So going to church was like sweeping the kitchen floor.
I knew I had to do it. There was no
chore.
choice.
It was a chore. You had to do it or else.
But I'm gonna be more direct with this because I need to hear your honest answer. When you were growing up in church, did you have questions that may have only resonated internally?
What type of questions are you talking about?
Were you curious about anything in terms of church structure and organization?
Let me
and why am I doing this?
Can I rephrase the question? Can we rephrase it? Did you have questions about like things people would say about God that didn't make sense?
Let me badger the witness. You can't handle the truth, Black. Okay, I got that.
You good? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
did you have like, okay, that didn't make sense. Why did they do that?
Yeah, like it's like.
But I still think in the back of your mind, you just didn't care.
Yeah, okay. It's like when they have like they talking about like Black History Month and ask a question. The answer is always Martin Luther King. Like in church, like the answer is always Jesus. Oh, why this happened, Jesus?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but he's not lying.
He's not lying. But okay, so in other words, okay, classic example: you lose a loved one. Okay, Big Mama. Big Mama was in church every Sunday, and then they said the Lord took her. So you would wonder, why would the Lord of all you got drug dealers, you have murderers, robbers, all these types of people? Why is the Lord picking on my grandmama who was in church every Sunday? Like are these valid questions?
I think so.
If you ask a person in church, just give me an idea of what kind of response you would get back.
Me?
Just in general.
Don't question God.
That's a good one. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, the Lord just called her home. It was her time.
Who are you to question? God makes no mistakes. Ooh, I'm getting more of them, Walker.
You're in your bag.
Let me cook.
Keep going.
You badgering yourself.
No, you're on it. Do you think these are just things we said because we didn't really know?
100%.
Is it okay for us to not know the answer?
100%.
Why do you think we don't say that? Why do you think we just say, I don't know why your mother is gone, your grandmother is gone?
I think there's a fear that comes with that. I'm taking it from a vantage point of, if it's me and I'm in this traditional church and I have an opportunity to impart some wisdom to somebody younger asking me these questions, okay? Mm-hmm. So we set the stage. In my mind, I'm like, man, if I give him the real, it could steer him away from church. And everything about church is good. Church is everything. God is good all the time. But if I'm real with him, he may not believe that. So I think there's a fear there.
Sure.
Does that make any sense?
But I don't think the solution. I don't think that's the solution.
Well, no, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just.
I know you're not.
Yeah.
I know you're not. But I'm just saying, like, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's a fear. I don't want to let them. I don't want to let them down in this moment.
Right, and that may not be the reason. That's just my thought.
Yeah.
But if you were to take that thought and expound upon it, you'll get Black, who over time just generates this, not resentment, but this resistance.
Like, this is not for me.
Yeah, because I'm somebody who's help. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you keep going.
I'm somebody who's inquisitive. I should be able to be inquisitive about this.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a problem.
Was church a prison for you? It's okay. No.
In the I guess in the way that I was there against my will.
You got paroled at 18.
I was there against my will.
Okay.
If I had a choice, I wouldn't have been there.
It was a prison for you. And that's a lot of people who feel that way.
Right. What could it have taken, Black, to change your opinion on church?
I guess I don't know how it would have ended, but if I was given the option to go to church, like let me choose to want to be there instead of making me be there. Possibly. I don't know if it would have changed anything, but like from time to time, like, hey, do you want to take this Sunday off?
Can I? I think there is value there. And even as a parent, I'm saying this only because YG, for at least the past year, has expressed his desire to confirm Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We send him to a Catholic school.
That's why.
Right. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Well, you got to go to school. You have to.
You don't have to go to Catholic school.
You don't have to go to Catholic school. But what I hear with Blaque, I can see in my own son. Because that's not something we forced on him to a degree. Because we don't teach Catholicism in our house. But for my now 8-year-old son to come to us repeatedly, routinely, consistently, and give us reasons why, I think that's the way it's supposed to be. But now one could argue, do they get there if you give them the option to go to church, or if they don't go to church? I don't know.
But you have a different situation. He's actually going to a religious school.
Right.
Yeah, he's going to mass.
So he's
week.
been indoctrinated daily.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a little different there.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's a little different. I think previous generations never, previous generations, generally speaking, did not encourage dialogue with their children.
Right.
It was what I say and is what it goes. You don't question me.
And
Amen,
we've talked
brother.
about the ramifications of that.
Whether it's church,
sex,
vegetables,
sex,
whatever, sex. You have a story you want to tell?
You can't get something off your chest, man.
No, we've talked about this. I just wanted to make sure they're one of the ones you're counting up over there.
What did they say about sex that made you just stay away from it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sex is bad.
Sex is bad. And it is to this day.
Do you have something you want to get off your chest?
No, I was being sarcastic for people that can't see me, but no, we talked about it, but I think it should be counted in your.
Okay, fine. But what I'm saying is for those who need the conversation and the understanding, because I think for a lot of us, what we were trying to do as kids was understand why when we would question. It wasn't necessarily we were rebellious. Help me make the connection. Why is this important? This is so not for me. And you're right. Like going to a setting like that is not for you. That's why they have children's church, right? If you got the means for it. But what I'm saying is that there's a reason why you have children's church. There's a reason why you have teen church. There's a reason why you have young adult stuff. There's a reason why you have, you know what I mean? Because you have something that fits each age range that's relatable, something that they can get from it, something that they enjoy, right? Well, when you just cram kids into a traditional setting where they just got to sit there.
Where it's one size fits all.
Yeah.
It's like taking your young kids and put them in a college class.
It's like help them understand why they need to be there. Because they're right. They shouldn't be there. Yeah, they're at church. That's great. You can keep an eye on them, but they're bored out of their mind, right? So I think that's that. If you can create an environment in terms of church where kids can go and get something from it, and then you nurture that throughout the week at home, you help kids understand that the importance of church. You help them see that, hey, this is something that's for me, right? And I think that's where a lot of tradition has gone wrong. They just trying to uphold what they saw somebody do who came before them. And they got blind spots all over the place. And what happens is, to Blaque's point, they get of age, they gone. Even if you got children's church, teen church, and all of that. You know what I mean? Because again, your spiritual life isn't all in church. You have to facilitate that throughout the week as well as a parent, to where when they get of age, they still have a desire for that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
If you just reduce it to just you going to church and church sucked, basically, then that's just going to be their understanding of church. Regardless of whether there's different churches they can try out. No, I'm done. I made a decision years ago. I'm done with this. Did I just describe you in a nutshell?
Yep.
So, Black, you going to go to church with me one day, man?
One day,
He'll go.
Friends and family, they do that all the time.
Black technically goes to church every week.
He does?
Yeah.
Where you go? What church you go to?
The Koth, Church of the Highlands.
For?
Frisbee.
He's going to church. What y'all do before y'all play?
We pray.
Do you lead it?
Nope.
You have once. Come on, Black.
Mm-mm.
Provocative.
I'm not going to lie about church.
Oh, too shy.
I'm not that far gone.
Walker.
Does provocative mean lie to you?
No, it just means sauce, I guess.
Did you have anything else you want to get off your heart? Did you jump off the ledge?
I jumped off. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Do you think we should just get the shout outs and player of the week? We stayed there a long time.
Let's go for it.
Because you and I didn't have a lot of door anyway.
We can talk about Dave Chappelle's Stunned next week.
Okay. I mean, I'm not the y'all can disagree with me here.
No, we can go ahead. I know we did spend a lot of time. Let's
It was a good conversation though.
I think so.
Okay.